Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Richmond. My name is Jeanne Daniels, and I'm honored to serve on your board of directors. For those of you who may be new to us, and those of you joining from near and far, welcome. We're so grateful to be able to remain connected. We are a community of many faith journeys and beliefs committed to being a fully inclusive and deliberately diverse space. We want you to know that whoever you are, you belong here. I hope that we continue to be a community that is resilient and committed to healing, does the work that needs to be done, and commits to maintaining and establishing relationships. We need each other. Let us continue to stand on the side of love together. Thank you for being with us today. May this be a comforting, centering, and restorative moment for you. If you would like to learn more about our community, you can visit our website at richmonduu.org. If you're interested in how you can further your connection and learn more about the mission of our church, please contact Margaret Rush at margaret.rush@richmonduu.org. Make sure to log in early every week to catch the announcements that precede the service. And also make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to look at past recorded services. Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. Be well.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to my backyard. I'm so glad you're here. I don't know where you're coming from. Put it in the chat. Tell us where you are coming from. If you're new here, you're very welcome. Let us know you're new here, and we'll send you some tricks of the trade and get you on a mail list so that you know when things are happening. But welcome to a service in which we review, reimagine, and discuss in our hearts and minds what we learned at the General Assembly of Unitarian Universalists, which was supposed to be in Providence, Rhode Island, a town we all have enjoyed before, but now had to happen virtually. So it was one of the biggest General Assemblies ever, third largest, which just speaks to how many people wanted to participate, even from a distance. But today you'll hear from lots of our lay leaders about what it meant. And I'm going to talk about the commission that was formed some years ago and what their reporting out was. But I think the bigger question is how we are going to work together to make change in this world at a time where change seems to be breaking open. Let's hope that's the case. So welcome to a time of worship. Welcome to a time of remembrance, of kindness, and of compassion. Settle in, exhale, and come on in. We're glad you're here. Our chalice lighting today brings the words of that great soul, that great American, John Lewis. Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful. Be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and to get into good trouble. Necessary trouble. I light this chalice because we are called to be in necessary trouble, and that the times bring us opportunity to do the work of a lifetime.
Good morning. My name is Leanne Luskin. I had the honor of serving as one of your delegates at this year's General Assembly, and I've been asked to share some information with you about some of the lectures offered as part of our GA. So first we will talk about the Foz lecture, which is named for Unitarian Sophia Lyon Foz. She was a revolutionary religious educator. The intended primary audience for this particular lecture is religious educators. And with our transition to family ministry and so many of us having to do school differently this fall, the information seems more relevant than ever to all of us. So I hope you find something helpful in what I'm about to share with you. This year's lecture was delivered by Jean Mendoza and Natalie Martinez. It was entitled Reflecting on Teaching About Indigenous Peoples. There is a handout available to you. I am pulling all of the information I'm about to share from that handout. There's so much there to talk about, and we don't have much time for this. So just a few key points. Both speakers wanted to stress how important it is to find books and materials that are historically and culturally accurate. One really good way to do that is to seek out Native authors. So if you're finding books about Indigenous people written by white authors, then it's possible there may be misrepresentations or inaccuracies in the books or the materials. Another important takeaway was about Native sacred knowledge and the fact that for centuries, that sacred knowledge was demonized and suppressed, often violently by non-natives. So when non-natives of today want to use that knowledge and those practices in ways that are taken out of context, it's a problem, even when intentions are very good. So we need to be extremely careful about how we're planning worship or RE lessons that include elements of Indigenous spirituality or religion. And one of the central questions that we might be asking ourselves is not what can we learn or teach about Indigenous spiritualities, but rather how do we teach or learn ways to deal with living in a country that has sought to erase or destroy Indigenous sacred knowledge and practices along with Indigenous lives. Another really important point that the speakers shared was about their practice of land acknowledgement, which can be a good and powerful step to take. So we can ask ourselves, whose land was this? Where are their descendants now? And how did that come to be? You may have heard people as they start a service or a lecture that they acknowledge the people whose land they are standing on. If we're doing that land acknowledgement without some commitment to social or political action, it can come across as superficial and ungrounded. So it's important that we connect. We're on the land of the Powhatan with some commitment to working for justice on behalf of the Powhatan and not just carry on with business as usual. There were important points about our seventh principle and our interconnectedness and how we can honor the hundreds of years of Indigenous protection and defense against settler colonizer exploitation. So these aren't protesters, but protectors and defenders of water, air, and land, and what we as non-natives can do to support those movements and offer help. Because I have so little time, I have to stop there, but please check out the handout that we'll include the link to. It's enormously helpful with offering Indigenous authors and resources. It's very, very helpful. Two other lectures that are really important to General Assembly are the Where lecture. That is the sort of keynote address that happens every year. This year it was Naomi Klein, who is a Canadian activist and author. She has written books called Shock Doctrine, about the rise of disaster capitalism. The speech that she gave was really profound about how we can take these moments of crisis and instead of exploitation, we can really make strong progressive change because we don't have any other options. And this year's General Assembly going virtual was one such example of how in times of crisis we can come together and make positive change and do things differently because we have to get creative. Another really important lecture is the Berry Street essay. This is the longest running essay series in the country. This year was our 200th anniversary. This was started by William Ellery Channing at the Federal Street Church in Boston. The entrance to that church was on Berry Street, and so that name sort of stuck for this lecture. It's held during the ministry days just prior to General Assembly. This year was unique that there were 3 essayists. We had Reverend Danielle DeBona, Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, and Reverend Joseph Santos Lyons. That lecture is available to the public for you to watch on the UU Ministers Association Facebook page. And if we can, I will share a link for that also. So lots of information. I hope that was helpful, and please check out the resources that are offered. Thank you.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love, a rose in the winter time.
General Assembly is really one of the best places to see our fifth principle, the democratic process in action, in Unitarian Universalism. It's where our congregations and covenanted communities generate support and vote for things that mean the most to them. AIWs are actions of immediate witness, offer a way to engage in collective social witness to affirm what is just and good in a statement that demonstrates solidarity with those who are mistreated or marginalized. This year, the prevailing AIWs included addressing 400 years of white supremacist colonialism, really taking a hard look at the damage that's been done to our Native peoples and standing in solidarity with them. The second was called an Amen to Uprising, which is a commitment and call to action to make our congregations and communities authentically anti-racist, multicultural, anti-oppressive spaces that dismantle anti-Blackness. This sounds pretty familiar in light of our recent resolution at the annual meeting, and the General Assembly has committed to staying in this work for the long haul. A business resolution directly involves the administration and structure of the association. It gives the GA the right to direct some of the work that the association will engage in. We have talked for years about socially responsible investing, and we continue to support the disinvestment and no future investments by the Unitarian Universalist Common Endowment Fund in corporations that are complicit in egregious human rights violations and violations of international law, and calls on all of us to do the same. Finally, a responsive resolution is made in response to a report given at the General Assembly. 3 of the 4 resolutions this year were adopted, and while they are not binding, they do stand as strong recommendations from the delegates. First is widening the circle by establishing an ongoing intersectional accountability commission and sunsetting the Journey Toward Wholeness Transformation Committee, which has existed for a number of years. This responsive resolution really helps us focus on addressing the recommendations of the Commission on Institutional Change. Second, supporting youth and young adults in Unitarian Universalism. Our youth and young adults have really faced tough headwinds in recent years, which have limited or eliminated funding and resources. This year, they said enough is enough, and through this resolution, asked for resources to better support youth and young adults, as well as including youth on instituting changes from the Commission on Institutional Change. And finally, a religious response to the pandemic, where we become advocates for all things related to health, equity, and safety.
Reading today is entitled Pry Me Off Dead Center, written by the Reverend Ted Loader. O persistent Holy One, deliver me from assuming your mercy is gentle. Pressure me that I may grow more human, not through the lessening of my struggles, but through an expansion of them that will undam me and unbury my gifts. Deepen my hurt until I learn to share it, and myself openly, and my needs honestly. Sharpen my fears until I name them and release the power I have locked in them and they in me. Accentuate my confusion until I shed those grandiose expectations that divert me from the small, glad gifts of the now and the here and the me. Expose my shame where it shivers, crouched behind the curtains of propriety, until I can laugh at last through my common frailties and failures, laugh my way toward becoming whole. Deliver me from just going through the motions and wasting everything I have, which is today a chance, a choice, my creativity, your call. O persistent God, let how much it all matters pry me off dead center, so if I am moved inside to tears or sighs or screams or smiles or dreams. They will be real, and I will be in touch with who I am and who you are and who my siblings and brothers are. Thus ends our reading.
Good morning. I was looking forward to General Assembly this year. John and I were going to take a road trip and go up there, and was set back, disappointed when we realized that we couldn't do it. And so I went online. But I still carried with me when I went online that there were 4,000 people somewhere else that I wasn't. It took me a while to get my head around the fact that all of us were experiencing GA online in a way that we've never done before. I attended 2 workshops that stood out for me. One was Paula Cole-Jones' workshop on being a community of communities. And what struck me is how much we here at First UU have actually become a community of communities. We're not a bunch of individuals in here. We all have certain groups that we identify with, that are part of us, that we want to spend time with, and we bring that identity with us into this community. And so we are a collective of sorts. The same way our denomination is, in that all our churches are a little bit different, our personal communities, but then we as a cluster are in a community of communities, a cluster of UU churches within our district here. So I want to start thinking more about what kinds of communities we want to make sure that we have within First UU for people to become part of, to help them on their spiritual journeys. The other workshop I attended was on multi-generational and multicultural leadership. But what I was struck with was how many people are in leadership at the UUA and in our association today are people that I knew as teens and young adults, and how we really have invited them in. They may have had to fight their way in, and some of them spoke to that, but the faith that they got as a child, as a young teen, as a young adult is enduring. And they are here promoting it today and promoting us as an association to live into our ideals, our principles, and become the beloved community that we're meant to become. I am so proud of them for sticking with it. These are people that are people of color. These are people that are from our LGBTQI communities. These are people that I have seen over the years that I've been around long enough in various positions, learning to exercise their leadership and learning to be leaders. So it gives me hope that we can encourage the generation of children we have now to be the leaders of our future, because they have a lot to teach us. So that was my GA experience. I hope you'll be with us next year wherever we are. Online was worth it, much to my surprise. Let us join in a time of meditation. Get yourself comfortable. Close your eyes if it's comfortable. Take a deep breath. Breathe in relaxation. Breathe out tension. Let your body relax. And just be aware of what it is to be at home. We are at home now. What it is to be at home in our house. The feeling of being at home. Take another deep breath and become aware that we're breathing together in this community. And just take a moment and experience what it is to be at home in this faith community, this community of First UU Richmond. How does it feel to be at home in this community as we breathe together? And take another breath. And extend your sense of being at home to what does it feel like to be at home in our Tidewater cluster, in our cluster of other UU congregations in this area. What is that feeling for you of being at home in our cluster with our sibling congregations that have nurtured us? Extend that sense of being at home in not just our house or in this particular community, but in the community of communities of all our churches in our Tidewater cluster. How does it feel to be at home? And let's go a little further out. Take another deep breath and notice what it feels like to be at home in the southern region, working together to build beloved community. The sense of being at home with all the other Unitarian Universalist communities in the southern region that we are part of. Breathe in that sense of being at home, that sense of working together to create beloved community. And let's extend our sense of being at home in our community to our community being our association, our Unitarian Universalist Association. Breathe in a sense of being at home in our association, of belonging to every congregation across the country. Feel in yourself the extent that you feel at home in your house, feel at home in this particular community, feel at home in our cluster of local congregations that nurture us, feel at home in the southern region where we're working together to create beloved community, and at home in our association, a home for our spirit's home, all the congregations in the UUA. And take one more breath and extend it to being at home in our faith across the globe. As Unitarian, we breathe together around the globe, breathing in that sense of being at home, of belonging, and of building beloved community in our world. Amen. Blessed be.
Will you join me in a time of prayer for great leaders? Spirit of love and of life, this is a time in which we are in need of deep leaders, great leaders, patient leaders, humble leaders, people who show us how to show up. The definition of who will lead us changes. It changes in the Association of Unitarian Universalist Churches. It changes in our congregation. It changes in the wider world in the work of combating racism and white supremacy, in naming oppression and fighting it, and in the election of people to lead politically this cities, counties, commonwealth, and the nation. Teach us a prayer that is a longing for those who will lead us rightly, for the humility that is needed to follow, to listen, to trust. For it is hard when we seek our privilege and our safety to know if we are following well. But help us to take faithfully the causes, the reasons that we are there to witness, and to trust that leaders show us new ways to become the people we wish to be. Spirit of love and of life, help us to step into the risk, to believe in the fights that we choose to wage. Help us to live in ways that are nonviolent and are of witness to the longing and the truth, for justice, for mercy, for compassion, for relationship, and for justice. Amen.
There will be better days. 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 Let the waves wash over. There will be better days. There will be better days. There will be better days. Let the waves wash over. There will be better days. There will be better days. There will be better days. I am there will be better days. There will be better days. There will be better days. Let the waves wash over. There will be better days. There will be better days. better days. There will be better days.
Hi, everyone. My name is Margaret Rush. I've been a lifelong UU, and I had been hearing about General Assembly for my whole life. Um, and about 6 years ago, I think, I was finally able to go. My children had reached a point where they could stay home alone. I had enough budget to be able to go almost. And it happened that year's GA was going to be held very close to where my brother lives, so I was able to tack on some family vacation, which made it especially appealing. So I went to Portland, Oregon, and walked into the convention center and felt right at home among one of the largest gatherings of UUs I'd ever seen and ever been a part of. And I was affirmed and happy and welcomed, and it was so wonderful to be a part of that large a group, all there for pretty much the same reasons, to attend workshops, to learn things, to see friends, to meet new people, meet old friends, meet people you only see at GA. So I want to encourage you to consider going to GA. Um, it's this past year this past last month, um, it was for the first time was completely virtual, and yet the feeling was still there. And I really want to help you understand that it's so important to go and be a part of that gathering. GA can be expensive. And so one of the things that helped me to be able to go all these years now is volunteering. I continue to volunteer. That also feeds my soul, and it also defrays the cost. Depending on what you can do, how much you can do, it will and oftentimes will waive the entire fee to attend GA. You still have to travel if we're going to do it in person, but it's a way to be able to afford to go. And I really want you to think about attending GA and seeing what this big, beautiful faith of ours is and can do and can be. So thank you. Hope you can join us next year.
Good morning. I'm Joe Kent, and I'd like to talk to you about Feed More and hunger in Central Virginia. Feed More is the merger of the Central Virginia Food Bank and the Meals on Wheels program, plus other local groups who act to meet the food needs of the food insecure families in our region. Through its support of local food pantries and direct support to schools, it provides 52,000 meals a day across 34 counties and cities. It receives food donations from local grocery stores and food drives, but uses the funds from individual donors and corporations to buy food in bulk. It's a nonprofit and is always in need of funds and volunteers. I volunteered in various capacities for 9 years. For the past 8 years, my regular weekly task has been to transport bags of weekend food to Green Elementary School, now renamed Cardinal Elementary. This summer I'm transporting food to local distribution sites where children and their families can go to pick up food. With 1 out of 8 families in the area being food insecure, the Feed More programs are critical. Please be generous in your support this morning and consider volunteering. The website feedmore.org has the information you need. Thank you very much.
It's very hot and very humid. So I'm going to try this outside. Don't get concerned if I get red. It's my nature. This year at General Assembly, one of the main presentations had to do with the work of the Commission on Institutional Change, which was formed 3 years ago in response to, because of, events that took place in the Unitarian Universalist Association, events which were not very pleasant to see. But it has a greater responsibility as well. Its ideas were to guide us in facing, renewing, and developing our future, free of white supremacy, free of values of racism, free of the weight of a culture that has long spoken to inequality as though it were necessary. Let's start with who we are. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of everyone, all people. It is our belief that we must affirm that dignity and worth in every exchange. That means no snide comments. That means trying to think the best of people at all times, especially in our community. Recognizing gifts from other people. But I still have lots of conversations where people tell me, I believe in the first principle, but not my mother-in-law. Or classically, not Hitler. Or more recently, not our president. People feel that it's a good rule generally, but there are some people who ought to be considered exceptions. And why do they want to have that person be an exception? Simply this. They want to be able to treat that person differently. They want to make that person an exception. They want the freedom to act badly in their presence. Today, in the chalice lighting, I talked about John Lewis's good trouble definition. He directed us to understand that you can go out and create trouble, but it has to be good trouble. This is a man who submitted himself repeatedly, passively, to the beatings and the indignities of law enforcement officers in the South, of the Klan, of bigots. Over and again, he showed us a way of working to convert people to their own worth and dignity. He and C.T. Vivian believed really strongly that it required a submission to the power that exists and to behave without violence in a non-violent way as holding up a light of hope and calling people in to a belief in themselves that sees their worth and dignity and calls them to put down violence and hatred. Now that's complex. Let me say that one more time in a different way. They believed we had to use non-violence as a weapon against those who would do us violence. That by that moral position taken in the face of what some might even call evil, that arises from the minds of people who hate, that we must endure in doing so until finally they see it will not matter. It will not matter. A lot of question has been raised about structural racism. We've recognized that very few people want to be racist. Very few people are racist. But many of us participate almost blindly in systems that deny worth and dignity to other people. Equality. These were some of the events that happened 3 years ago that brought along the Commission on Institutional Change. What happened? Hiring decisions were made where people of color were never adequately considered for positions. There was a sort of old boy network working among young, white, professional folks who allowed their primary concern to be the efficiency and effectiveness in a corporate sort of way of people who were coming into the UUA as staff. And there's a reason for that. Yeah, I want to talk about that too. You see, when we expect our faith, our congregations to operate with the values of efficient corporations, which seek the highest productivity, then we too are embracing a cultural value which is proven time and again to value efficiency over relationship. The commission was formed to get us to look at the values we were actually enacting in our ways of dealing one with another, and to ask us how we might do better. The work has been grueling. Our own former intern, the Reverend Leslie Takahashi, has been at work on this report for the full 3 years as its chair. Also, she is the author of the Bending the Arc of Justice, a compendium of what happened between our time at General Assembly as Unitarian Universalists at General Assembly in Calgary and now. And she brought to our attention in that book the many ways in which a white dominant culture led to aggressions and oppressions of people of color among us. There are also 2 other works I commend to you. One is called So Works, edited by Reverend Marjorie Bowens Wheatley. It's an older text, but I recommend it to you because I'm going to recommend you also read Centering, which is written by many authors, including our own Reverend Sherman Logan. The reason that I recommend these texts is that they're good background for us to understand how long and how persistent we have failed to live up to our first principle. And the folks who serve on the Commission on Institutional Change have put together a great assessment of those aggressions and failures. They have listed over and again the many ways in which we've set up a system to reward efficiency, even profitability, over relationality and compassion. In other words, they've pointed out how our principles, our 8 principles, and our functioning diverge greatly. And they call us back into accountability. Now, the work that they have, Widening the Circle, is the new book, edited by the Commission. The new book tells us about the things we need to engage in to bend the arc of justice and to eviscerate white supremacy among us. And some people just assume that's an easy task. But I think if you read these works that I'm mentioning, you'll come to understand it is not so. Ministers of color struggle every day with congregations who will not allow them to be themselves, who prefer a whitened version of themselves. Religious educators who are told that their curriculum is not relevant to the families and the students because it has too many people of color in the curriculum. These are just simple things, but there are more, many, many more. So I want to suggest to all of us that we spend the fall reading the Commission's report. And if you're a devoted Unitarian Universalist, you might read all the texts I've recommended, but do try to read one of those texts, Soul Works or Centering, before you read the Commission's report, because it helps to ground us in real, true experiences that are shared with us by our siblings in this faith. It will break your heart. So be ready. Now, the last part of what I want to say is about accountability. The Reverend Leslie Takahashi and others have worked on this report a long time. Sometimes they had to fight to do it. Believe it or not, the efficiency of the UUA sometimes wanted to just keep moving without giving them what they needed to do their work. But in fact, the truth is they were called to this work by our interim co-presidents, Bill Sinkford, Leon Spencer, and the Reverend Dr. Sophia Bentencourt. 3 people who are of great renown and respected across our faith. And they helped preserve the opportunity for this group to continue this work. With the election of Susan Frederick Gray, work began in the association to implement new standards for hiring, new criteria for evaluations, and just generally, new awareness of how white supremacy can creep into all kinds of decisions where it does not ever belong. But on the congregational level, we have an accountability. We are now called by the Commission to consider in our own congregation how indeed white supremacy is alive and living, how tendencies toward profitability and efficiency override compassion and relationship, how we can inadvertently participate in white supremacy, even at the very same time when we try very hard to undo racism. The recent book by Ibrahim Kendi, about how to be an anti-racist and how not to be a racist, which is his theme throughout the book, to force people to look at the choices that are being made, is a robust book on what it is required to be anti-racist. And he says quite clearly and tells tales on himself that says, I am racist and I am an anti-racist. And I have to fight to assert to defeat the racism that's in me so that I can be an anti-racist, a committed anti-racist. Now, we are in a special place in this dialogue. We are in a place that's a ground zero of hatred and oppression. We are in a city, a metropolitan area, which was the center of the oppression of people for hundreds of years. So I've always felt we don't really have a choice if we live here. If we live in the greater Richmond area, we don't have a choice because we are faced with a history that is persistent still among us. Look how long it took to get the miscreant history of the statues of Monument Avenue off of their pedestals. It tells you that we're breaking open an opportunity, not just for changes in policing, because that wouldn't even be remotely enough, but for changes in incarceration, in the economics of housing and jobs and healthcare and education, which have been historically unequally dispersed. Even today, we are sending our children to largely segregated schools, or schools that are maybe not segregated, but the IB wing is all white and everybody else is all black in the worst part of the building. These are real and true events in our present day situation, and some places are better than others. at gathering a diverse group of students. But we must be active and accountable. That's why I want us to read Widening the Circle, because it talks to us of theology, of practicality, of reflection, of discernment, of commitment. And that's the thing that we must know. We here in the greater Richmond area, and our friends beyond who join us, have a ringside seat to the work that must be done. To honor the first principle, everything must change, and equality must actually come into being before we'll ever be able to say that we have put white supremacy in its place. Along the way, we will learn that we have racist tendencies, white supremacist benefits that we enjoy, and will be challenged in that work to understand that we, all of us together, must work with hope and get into good trouble in order to make the future be different than it is now. This is my hope, and I know it's been a longer sermon. I apologize, but I think it's a really important thing for us to understand that General Assembly brought to us the report of the Commission on Institutional Change. It is a published book. It is available for everyone to read, and I hope we'll join together this fall in doing so.
Country lost two titans this week, the Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian and Representative John Lewis, stalwarts of the American Civil Rights Movement, who both died Friday, July 17th. Although 15 years separated them in age, Reverend Vivian and Mr. Lewis shared a common experience. Both were relentless fighters for racial justice and civil rights. Martin Luther King dubbed C.T. Vivian the greatest preacher ever born. Lewis, however, was not a fiery preacher like Vivian. In fact, he was known more for what he didn't say. Diane Nash, a leader in the Nashville sit-in movement, writes, his verbal communication would often be a sentence like, "I think we need a sit-in tomorrow." That's about all he would say. The story of Lewis's life can be understood in terms of his dedication to a single idea, that of beloved community. He defined it as a truly interracial democracy based on nonviolence and simple justice that values the dignity and worth of every human being. What C.T. Vivian and John Lewis most had in common was that they showed up. Over and over again, they showed up. When it was called for, they put their bodies on the line. They were beaten, arrested, and thrown in jail time and time again. I had the honor of meeting both these men through my work with the Living Legacy Project and through the Unitarian Universalist Association. I believe we do ourselves a disservice if we think, oh, I could never be like them. They were giants. Yes, they were. But they became giants because they never stopped doing the work. Sitting through long, boring, seemingly unproductive meetings, planning, practicing, studying, taking risks, and advocating for justice. If we could keep this vision of beloved community in our hearts, if we could keep showing up, no matter how life gets in the way, that's how we honor the lives of these two great men and so many other women and men who have shown up over the years and are showing up today, working for justice. That's how we make the dream of beloved community real in our lifetimes. It is so worth the effort.
We extinguish this chalice and bring our service to a close.
Our service is now at an end. We're very grateful that you've joined us today, and I hope that you've discovered some things about Unitarian Universalism and our General Assembly that can inform you going forward. I hope that you'll think about ordering the texts that I spoke of: Soul Work, Centering, and the new Widening the Circle of Concern from the Commission on Institutional Change. And I hope you'll participate in discussions, in questioning what it is that we need to address. I want to thank all the people who worked on this service today, who tried to create something of General Assembly to share with you. They are a talented and wonderful group of people, and there are more than this who were there, so I want to thank them all for their commitment to our faith. And last, we will take as our example John Lewis and C.T. Vivian. And this is our benediction. Show up. Even when you know that there is risk and you may be beaten, you may be reviled, you may be arrested. When it is necessary, show up. But bring your non-violent self, your blessing self, your self that wants to let the other know that within them you see their inherent worth and dignity. May this be so. Amen, Ashe, Amin, blessed be.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Oh, for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth, keepers of faith, makers of peace, and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time, daughters of dust, and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love, lovers of life, and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings, and we are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe. Ooh.